friends. Welcome back to John's Comics with Friends and another Saturday morning hangout interview show. I appreciate all of you coming by and hanging out in the chat with us live or catching the rewind later on. This is the second time I've tested out this new format for not all my Saturdays, but some of the ones upcoming. When a channel changed slightly to be mentioning how many friends I've made and how grateful I am to know so many of these amazing people in our community, I felt like I wanted to include an opportunity to get to know them even better, beyond just the books, right? Beyond just these stories and these characters that mean so much to us. And if you missed the conversation with Matt last weekend, he's a gentleman who's doesn't have a lot of free time. It's hard to make the time, and it was great to chat with him a little bit. My guest today, I've had the chance to meet twice. This is a person who's been willing to hang out with me in person twice. This is rare. This is rare to have that. But more importantly, this is Bryan. If you don't know, there's some links down below you guys can click on while I'm chatting here for a second. But I got to know Bryan through our incredible friend Jennifer from Comics Will Break Your Heart, and Bryan was a surrogate for all of us in a lot of ways, being able to be that person that was there for Jen, spending time with her, taking her to awesome concerts and strip clubs and drag shows and all the fun things that you want to do with the people you care about while they're still with us. And I was so grateful envious, but also grateful to have somebody like that representing us in this community, because none of us could be there like that every day. And the fact that he was able to make that time and do that for her was incredible. But then when Charlie and I got to go up there for the memorial service that he was helping to organize, we got to spend even more time with him, more time with his son, who's awesome, more time with his wife, who's incredible. It was so eye-opening and so connecting. It was so powerful. And I thought, you know what, he's got to be near the top of the list when I do these interviews, because I really want to share that experience with all of you. So, ladies and gentlemen, I got Bryan from Marvel by the Month.
Hey, it's me. How you doing?
Doing great, man. And you're in the most amazing man cave there. Absolutely spectacular room.
Yeah, during the pandemic, we had hosted a school pod for my kid and 3 other kids in his grade. And so our living room and dining room were taken over 4 days a week by, they were being homeschooled there by a tutor.
Sure, yeah.
So we needed more house. So my wife was working for a home remodeling company at that point, and we got it to bump to the top of the list, and we converted our garage into like soundproof studio space. And then I moved all my comics out here, and this so became amazing. my office and where we record our show. And yeah, I mean, it turns out having books, like a foot of books on every surface is great soundproofing. So it's acoustically sound. And that's why the IRS should never audit me. It's all necessary for what I do.
Right. Yes. This is important tools for your work, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Well, I appreciate you being here, sir. And the links, not only for Instagram and YouTube, but all the podcast links and the link tree for Bryan and Marvel by the Month, it's all in the description for the video. So folks, definitely click and check in on that stuff for us. I'm going to say hello to the chat. Some friends here who are tailgating early. Got my man Darth Lopez is in here. He's talking X-Force. I know he is a big Hickman era fan of X-Men like myself. So he's been reading up on the X-Force run in that time frame. We got my friend Ruben Guzman. What's going on, White Tiger? Good to see you, sir. And we've got Libro Perediso, my movie-going friend. I did see Superman this weekend. I hope you saw it, buddy. It's well worth the money. You should check it out. And I know Bryan's going to go a little later today, it sounds.
That's the plan. Yeah. I'm very excited what we've been hearing. Sounds like, I don't know. I was a little nervous with, when there seemed to be some sort of backlash with what Gunn's comments were about it being an immigrant story, because it is. And that shouldn't be something you run from or hide from.
It's not a shock.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, anyone who has read a Superman comic in the last 90 years should be aware of that.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I was seeing like some initial box office projections, and it looks like it's going to just shatter the level that they thought it was going to open at, which is
That's
awesome.
awesome. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
great. And the reviews are so great, both from
yeah,
moviegoers and fans and comic nerds and average just moviegoers. It sounds great.
yeah, 100%.
We got my friend Magic Lasso. I know he saw it already. He was going through all the pictures on my Instagram, looking at all the popcorn boxes in the background. Like, what does that one cost? What does that one cost? We got Perry in the chat. What's going on, Perry? Good to see you, my friend. And let's see. We got Drew Manchu. What's going on, Drew? Rod the Rican. He's going live later today to talk about some comic books that people can get on the cheap. Good to see you, Rod. I hope things are going well. Christina Payne, one of the great moderators in the chat. I appreciate you, Christina, dropping all the good links. Much appreciated. And we got Matt from the Heroes for Hire Comic Club. I appreciate all of you guys coming and hanging out with us for a little bit. There is the link. You can check out Marvel by the Month. And of course, podcasts. Go find them on any of your favorite podcast places. So, Bryan, thank you for joining me for this and for being a guinea pig for doing this.
Sure.
The question I so for those that don't know the behind the scenes here, I send out a list of questions and I let my guests kind of let me know which ones they want to go first, what order they want to go in. And so far, 2 for 2, everybody seems to pick the first question first because chronologically it's perfect for the origin here a little bit. The first question is, I like to know, what were you like as a kid? What was your childhood like? As far as like the household you grew up in and your experience first finding comics. What was that origin like for you?
Yeah. So I'm the eldest of 3 kids in my family. And so it was sort of up to me to be the one to kind of discover things. I didn't have an older sibling, saying it's like, oh, pointing me toward this, or, having a room full of stuff that I could raid. So I was really just kind of guided kind of randomly. I grew up in a really small town in Vermont, like fewer than 10,000 people. And at the time, I was, into like a lot of cartoons I would see on, weekday afternoons and Saturday mornings. And so I was in like a corner store with my dad one day, and I was just like randomly looking at the comics racks. And I found that there was a comic series based on the cartoon Mask.
Oh yes,
so,
let me switch you away.
Yeah, so we got
yes.
So I know there's going to be people in the chat who are big collectors, and condition is super important in all this. I'm your worst nightmare. I do the thing where I get a bunch of comics and then I have them sent away and chopped up and bound into custom binds. But yeah, this is the first. I think there was a limited series and there was like a 10-issue series of the Mask comics that DC published in the 80s. And so, yeah, like I got into comics just randomly because, I was in that store with my dad on that day, and it was a thing I recognized. And that was like the first comic I'd ever like intentionally purchased.
So you're like the kid that like they're shopping and you're like laying on the floor and next to the spinner rack, just pulling the books down.
Very much so. Yeah. I mean, I was, it's funny, like watching my kid now, who you've met, my son,
Yes.
Jack, who is, fearlessly social. He'll talk with anyone. He'll talk their ear off. He has like no sense of stage fright whatsoever. My my wife used to hate it when I said this when he was little, but it's true. I said he's the world's most abductable child. So, but yeah, so that's him. I was exactly the opposite as a kid. I was so quiet and so withdrawn. And I don't recall learning to read. I just kind of always was able to read, as far as I know. I mean, I'm sure I learned at some point, but
so yeah, like an escape to like be able to express some things.
Exactly. And also it was just like, if I had a book with me, I was entertained, and also
Sure.
I could just like put my nose in that and not have to, navigate social situations and things like that. So yeah,
Right.
I mean, comics were made specifically for me, because once I started reading them, then I started meeting other people who were like, yeah, I'd much rather read a comic than talk to people too. Like, oh, you're my people. So
Yes. You got some compliments on the library there, and you know what, gang, you're only getting like, I don't know, like a third, right? It's
yeah,
just
the
one
reverse angle
sliver.
is exactly the same. Yeah, so it's
Yeah, it loops
literally all the
all the
way
way
around.
around. It's
Yeah,
incredible. It's
yeah.
incredible. Hello to Paul. What's going on, Paul? Good to see you, sir. And we got my man Shop for Comics. What's going on, Shop? So yeah, then I had a similar experience as well. I mean, I
Hmm.
was the kid in junior high reading Jaws at the beach, Peter Benchley's Jaws. I'm there on summer break in sixth grade. Everybody's swimming and playing, and there I am. I've got pictures of me, skinny, super white, super frail, and
Yep.
reading Jaws at the beach, like something way not appropriate for me to be reading at that age.
Yeah,
But it was
and
a
but
very
that's
much an escape, and I just enjoyed it, you know.
I also love that you were reading it on the beach. Like
My mom was in fact, almost all my uh, closest adults around me as a kid growing up were teachers. And it was
Okay.
always like books were this thing you spoil your kids with. Like that was
Yeah.
like understood. Like
Hmm.
these are the things you give kids freely. You don't
Yeah.
restrict. You know, you,
Right,
you
right,
just
right.
you just give. And so my mom just wanted us reading. She didn't care what it was. So, my older brother was reading It, Stephen King's It, and it's like, whatever they want, they're just reading, and they're able to talk about it, and they're interested in it, and they're passionate
Right.
or whatever. But it stemmed from just like always flooding our rooms with books, like always. And Christmas time, my dad would have this big table full of books, and we would draw names, and you could like pick and choose from the pile, like, what do you
Oh,
want, you know?
wow.
And he still does
Yeah,
it to
yeah.
this day. He'll still have at Christmas, like, a big table full of books, and all of so I have two brothers, one older, one younger, and
Hmm.
all of us and our wives, and we're all there, and everybody gets to go through it. And now the grandkids get to go and draw books out of it as well. And you just whatever's the new Jack Reacher book, or that new nonfiction story from Krakauer, or whatever it is.
Yeah. I love that. That's such a great idea. Yeah, my family, they're not a bunch of readers, really. I mean, uh my mom was probably the biggest reader in the family, and she also was a teacher for her entire career. She was a teacher and then an administrator, and then went back to teaching. But yeah, I think I was I mean, my dad was very much into sports in school, and he always tried to guide me in that direction, but he never pushed me in that direction, which I always really
Nice.
appreciated. Like he would sign me
Yeah.
up for soccer or for little league or things like that when I was a kid, and then you know as I sort of realized, it's like this is not for me, and it's never gonna be for me. Like
Sure.
there was no fuss, but he would still take me to a couple Red Sox games every summer at Fenway Park. So it's like that was great. So it's like
Sure.
he instilled in me like a love for that stuff, which is something I would not have naturally chosen for myself. But it's a thing we've been able to bond over the years, which
Nice.
has been great. So yeah.
My dad was similar, like, because
Mhm.
his expectation was that you played sports all the way through high school, and
Oh,
I
okay.
was
Hmm.
not that inclined.
Yeah.
And when I found theater, I was able to convince him that I could swap theater for
Yes.
for the athletics, and so I could work on the plays. It didn't matter if I was doing lighting or acting or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, as long as I was doing it, it was just something to keep me out of trouble, I guess, in his mind.
Yeah, yeah, and it's something where like my kid is not inclined toward team sports as much as he is, a really social and outgoing guy. Like he really likes to be like he doesn't like being bound by a lot of rules.
and
So,
and I didn't like the pressure of feeling like I might let down my team. So I I
yes.
I geared away from team sports as well. My brothers were team sports. I was doing track and cross country just because it was like, hey, if I don't do well, it only impacts me, kind of a thing.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And what he has we realize he's really gotten into is improv. So
Ooh,
he went with some friends of ours, a friend of ours who's he's a good friend of my wife's, who I met when I met her. He's our chiropractor. He also was the person who performed our wedding ceremony. So he's like a real Swiss Army knife of a friend. Yeah, but he has been doing comedy sports improv for a couple decades now, and so he and his wife brought Jack to one of his shows, and there was a point where they're like, asking the audience for volunteers to come up, and Jack, of course, volunteers, and they put him in a scene, and he just absolutely killed it. Like legitimately got the audience laughing, and he got a couple of the performers to break, which is like so difficult. And so he got a taste for it. He did a couple more times, and now next week he's doing an improv class. But yeah,
wow, that's fantastic.
So it's like, and that sort of does give like the team sport, you get the lessons that you would get from that without the pressure or the anything else.
And there's a ton of good skill growth and learning about yourself, and you have to have a very nimble mind for something like that. So that's impressive.
Totally. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
We got aggressively relaxing jumping in. What's going on, my friend? Good to see you here, sir. Libro Paradiso says, healthy parenting, Brian. Unfortunately, I know parents who pressure their kids to play sports they don't want to do. And once they are in it, they are unforgiving. And yes, better to let the kids be driving that engine. And it sounds like your parents let you, Brian, kind of do that you were driving your engine for yourself a little bit.
Yeah, very much so. Yep.
That's important. That agency makes a big difference.
Totally.
The second question I had for you is, one, obviously being a teacher and being surrounded by teachers, I think it matters a ton when you find those people that see something in you that maybe you didn't recognize that has an impact on you. And I've had several in my life. So is there someone, a teacher, whatever, that you look at as having that imprint on you or giving you that guiding influence?
Yeah, I mean, I've been really lucky to have a lot of great teachers over the years. Even though I grew up in a very small town, I would say that like a lot of the high school teachers who I had were, especially my English teachers, just, some of the best and, most selfless folks who I've ever met. And they, just really did their best to they had instruction to deliver, but they also, really encouraged us to, sort of explore and be creative, and kind of instilled a love for learning, and, were really responsive and met the students where they were at. And you just, really enjoyed being in their presence.
Sure.
So, and all the way through, college, I was very lucky to have some fantastic teachers. But I think probably the mentor figure who actually meant the most to me over the course of my life was the fellow who owned the comic store in my hometown, Mark Patterson. So the shop is no longer there, unfortunately. But I mean, Mark opened his shop, the Comics Outpost, in the mid 80s, and basically just in time for me to come of age, whereas like I'm interested in these things called comic books. So I remember going into his shop for the first time. I remember it was it was a Halloween, and they were doing like, you come in costume, you get a comic book. So the comic that I got, because again, I was very much into, sort of the licensed toy comics. I picked up a free copy of Transformers 13, and that is like, oh, there's a whole Transformer. There's a lot of these. It's like, oh, so I can, and then like, that was the beginning. Like once I realized there was a store full of them,
sure.
And they had some things I was interested in. And so I spent a lot of time there. And then especially heading into middle school. So I went to a private Baptist Christian school for elementary school, and then transitioned to the public school for middle school, which is very rough.
Yeah, that's a tricky transition. Yeah.
And that was, so basically, I struggled socially, but there was a comic shop. And so I would, basically when I wasn't at home or at school, I was at the comic shop, and Mark didn't mind that I was, just occupying the futon and, reading all his stuff.
I love it.
Yeah. And then, gradually just, we became really great friends. I wound up working in that shop. He remains a really
Oh,
great
that's
friend of mine to
fantastic.
this day.
Is he
Yeah.
still
So
living back there?
he is still back in Vermont. Yep. Yep. So, I try to get back every year and see folks back there. I don't have any family back there anymore. But I have a lot of friends, and, Mark is at the top of that list.
That's
But there was,
fantastic.
yeah. And so since the shop was in central Vermont. And so I grew up essentially one town over from where Frank Miller grew up.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So he grew up in East Montpelier, and I grew up in Barrie, Vermont. And Frank is maybe 10, 15 years older than me. But I had friends who went to the same high school that Frank went to. And there used to be this, like when Frank was in high school there, he painted a mural on one of the walls.
Oh, wow.
And then when they did some, I don't know, remodeling, refinishing of the school, they just painted over it.
Oh, jeez.
So,
Oh, that story
yeah,
took a turn. Oh,
yeah.
oh, tragic.
But to bring Frank into the situation and to talk about Mark. So Frank would, when he came back to visit his family over the holidays, he would stop into the comics store, and
Oh, nice.
Mark would, first of all, not tell anyone that he was coming in, and second of all, when he was in the store, especially if you were working there or you were in the inner circle, he made you swear on pain of death. It's like, do not bother Frank when he is in the store, because he's here to shop and we want him to have a good time. He's not here to be badgered by little nerds. So
he's a customer.
Exactly. So so I did see Frank in there a couple of times. I didn't actually get to talk to him. But the day after he had come in, I went down to the shop, and Mark had this waiting for me, which is a copy of Dark Knight Returns, #1, book
Classic.
1, and it's signed,
oh, wow,
by Frank to Bryan from his pal Mark.
That is cool.
Yeah. So 1992 that was. So
wow.
Yeah, so it's again, I'm going to horrify everyone who collects for value, because I just have this in a ratty old backing board, and it's got creases and things, but the value is in the...
It's your book, right? You do what you want with it.
Exactly.
It clearly is a priceless possession for you, so it doesn't, nobody's questioning that. But what a great way to like connect to this experience of maybe reading that story at an early age, at early time, with the experience of this friend, this employer, right? This was this your first comic shop too?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Wow. I mean, yeah, it took me a while. I can't remember when I went in my second one, but it was a while after that, because it's a very small state, so but yeah, and I think like that was just like an encapsulation of like a lot of sort of good nerd values that were instilled in me by Mark, whereas like respectful distance of the professional, but also at the same time, like if you have a chance to do something special for a friend, like make that happen. So yeah.
There's been times when I've had similar experiences with guys like Bueller, where he's talking about like, oh, I know this person or that person, and he's walking around, before the con opens with, someone like Sam, and he's like, tricking Sam into going over and meeting a creator like McFarlane or whatever before the con opens, and it's like, he's respectful of Todd and not going to like take advantage of it. But if he has an opportunity where somebody like Sam can get to meet Todd, that's what a great way to fan the flames of the joy we all have for this medium.
100%. Yeah.
I forgot, Ryan asked about the cover for that Mask volume. How did they use that? How did they make that cover?
So when you send the books off, and then there's this real like leap of faith. You put a bunch of books in a cardboard box, you send it out to the middle of the country somewhere, hopefully they get back to you and say, yeah, your comics arrived. I've never had anything go missing, but it is sort of like a really like this is the system.
Yeah.
And then they write back and they say, okay, here's the dimensions that the cover is going to be. And they say it's like, you know, the front cover is going to be this wide, the spine's going to be that wide, the back cover is going to be like that. And then I just designed this all in Photoshop. So
oh wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah,
so you
so
were able to create the cover that you wanted for the unit.
Yes. Yeah,
Cool.
they will. It's a service they'll also do, and then you can just do also very plain ones that have, you know, just like, you know, just words embossed on them. But like if I have a chance to zhuzh it up a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and do that. So
right.
Yeah.
No, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you, Christina. I appreciate you, my friend. Yeah, wow, that's great. And I will say my early shop experiences were very different, and I'm grateful that I have the LCS that I have now.
Yeah.
Because it's far more kid friendly, and the ones
Oh,
that I went
good.
to when I was little were a little, you know, you get those ones that are sometimes like, this isn't for kids, don't touch the stuff, you know,
Yeah.
watch your kid, don't let them interact with it, which is so funny because it's the future customer that you're
Seriously
you're really interacting with there, right? You're cutting off a whole you know, level of income here when you do this.
Yeah, like I'm sure in the back of Mark's mind, you know, he's kind of grumbling about me, you know, just sitting there and reading a bunch of comics that I may or may not actually have paid for.
Right.
But, you know, at the same time, if you look at, you know, over the lifetime of that store, which I probably put tens of thousands of dollars into, you know, it's like, it's okay if, you know, maybe a couple of these get creased or whatever, you know, like, and just if the kid is into comics, let the kid be into comics. You know, it's going to come back to you. Even if you just want to do it on that, you know, just most base capitalist level, like yeah, it's going to pay off. Yeah.
Well, and that's the same with my girls too. Without like, I tried really hard not to just push my comic favorite characters or whatever onto them, but let them kind of discover it. I would always have stuff out and be like, oh, this is what I'm reading now, or this is what's on the shelf, and you can they're welcome to take anything they want to check out. If I buy something new that hey, you should check out this new, like whenever it's, so like Charlie found DC Silver Age stuff and Archie, and that was her jam. Like that's what she wanted. Yeah. I didn't read a ton of that stuff. She was the one, right? And then my oldest, Kate, Raina Telgemeier, is her jam. So anything that Raina did, she was like, yes, give me more of that. You know, Babysitter's Club too. Like throw it all in. Nobody's reading X-Men but me. I'm the only fool reading X-Men in the house, but it's nice that they're coming at it from their interest level, you know?
Yeah. I would be careful how I phrase this because Tom Brevoort has been very, very good to our show. He's appeared as a guest several times, but I'm not sure who's reading X-Men right now. I mean, I know the Gail Simone book is great, and I know there's several series that have been like the Mark Russell X Factor was amazing. I love that guy.
He's so funny and he's so talented, man. It's crazy.
Yeah,
and I'm loving the Storm book right now. But that's because I love that character and the artwork is so wonderful. But I understand but I understand that Krakoa era wasn't for everybody either. Even though I was obsessed with it, I understand. You know.
Yeah. Yep.
What's up, James? Thank you for hanging out with us, bud. The next question is about the common times we have in life where there's gaps, right? Like go off to college, you discover, you know, the opposite gender or whatever. You know, I feel like there's always these times in life where your comic collecting has to take a backseat, or even the reading takes a backseat. What were some of those times in your life? And then are there any books that feel like brought you back? Like that this is the one that made me come back to reading.
So I don't think there was ever a time when I wasn't reading comics at all. There was definitely times where it was greatly deprioritized.
Sure.
I moved out to the West Coast after college, and for a while I was still subscribed to books through Mark, and I would still like send him a previews order, and I would get a shipment from him every month or two.
That's cool.
Yeah, you know, just again, like if I feel like, you know, he got me started so well in so many ways that I wanted to, you know, continue supporting him if I was able to. But like I wasn't seeking out comics, and the Bay Area has a ton of great comic shops, but I was not seeking those out. and I wasn't really discovering anything new. I was just kind of like reading the series I had always been reading, or following the creators I'd always been following. And but it was getting to late 90s, and I was probably down to a handful of series. I had stopped reading all Marvel stuff at that point. Like Marvel had left me behind. And I just like, okay, well, the mid 90s were not my favorite era of superhero comics. So
yeah, it was rough.
Yeah. But then, I was just started hearing some buzz around, hey, there's this Ultimate Spider-Man book that that Marvel's doing right now, where they're just kind of like, it's like a reboot of its own, it's in its own continuity. You don't have to know anything going in. And like last I had followed Spider-Man, it was like the beginning of the Clone Saga. I'm like, okay, I'm out. So but then I heard about this Ultimate Spider-Man. I was like, okay, so I'll check it out. I picked up the first few issues and really liked the way that the writer was doing this kind of decompressed storytelling, and like really taking his time with it. And it's like, oh, this is Brian Michael Bendis. This seems like someone I might want to watch. And then someone mentioned also, it's like, oh, he's also writing Daredevil. And I picked that up, and it's like, this is like the kid friendliest, new reader, like jump in and have fun, and it's very approachable. And Daredevil is this like gritty crime noir. I'm like, who is this guy?
He's so diverse, right off the bat.
Yeah, who's just doing two Marvel series that and I'd given up on Marvel, but I'm like, this is like a whole new kind. If this is the kind of stuff they're doing right now, maybe I'm more interested in where they're at right now. And so that through Bendis, like I was discovering other creators, and got back into Marvel, and I was interested in seeing where things went. But yeah, he brought me back into Marvel. He remains one of my favorite writers. Been lucky enough to have him not just on the show a few times, but like here in the studio. And it's like, to have gone from oh wow, I really like this writer, I'm going to read everything he does, to Brian Michael Bendis is hanging out at my house. Like,
that's great.
That is just like,
that's wild.
Yeah, this is a weird world I live in now. So, but yeah, we just, amazing. not to overly self-promote, but we did just do an episode with him where he talked about, it was our July 19th. So the premise of Marvel by the Month, should have mentioned this earlier, is we go through each month of Marvel publishing history, 1 month at a time per episode. And we did an episode on our July 1976, the bicentennial. And Bendis came over to talk about Jack Kirby's Captain America's bicentennial battles. And we just had the best conversation. It's really one of the episodes I'm most proud of.
I love it.
Yeah, so that was really great.
He seems, I've yet to meet him, but everything I've seen and heard, from you, from Jen, from Bueller, is that he's just one of those really truly genuine people.
Yes,
and so knowledgeable, obviously so talented. That era that you're talking about, it's funny because I'm currently rereading his New Avengers, the volume 1 he did of New Avengers. Yeah. I mean, the Daredevil, of course, magnificent, Ultimate Spider-Man. There was so much. He had so many great irons in the fire. And continues to this day, obviously. But like that, there was something in the water there at that time that he was really tapping into. Right, it was incredible.
Absolutely. And you mentioned Jennifer, and when she had first gotten her cancer diagnosis, and we put together the GoFundMe, which you were hugely helpful for getting going and promoting. I started reaching out to the folks we had met through the podcast, and just said, hey, could you make a little noise about this for us? And everyone was great about it. But then Bendis goes one step further, and he emails, and he's like, yeah, absolutely. What do you need? And then he's like, would a care package be appropriate? Like, is that something that she'd like? And then I was like, I think she'd love that. And he's like, okay, is she more of like a mainstream comics reader or like an indie? And he's like, I'll put something together. And like within a day or two, he had put together this massive box of comics, and like, printed off scripts for things that had never gotten produced, and like posters and all this stuff. And and he had it dropped off to her apartment, like to the door of her apartment, within a couple days, and it was
That's
just
incredible.
tremendous. Like, he didn't have to do that, and he certainly had
No.
plenty of other things going on. He's got 4 kids and a thriving career, you know, but he found time
Right.
to do that, and it meant so much.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Yeah, I think I
Yeah.
remember you telling that story, but it still just kind of stuns me every time to hear it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Don't worry, Mark. I will be shooting a video at some point to go over Superman, buddy. It'll happen. Don't worry. Air Spider says after having his daughters, Ultimate Spidey is what brought him back. So that's cool
Totally.
as well. And Daredevil. Yeah. There it is.
Yep.
Yeah. And I don't know what it is. I think it's because I have a couple of friends that never, that to your point, I think earlier, had fallen out with Marvel at that point. And now they're finally going back and reading some of that stuff. And so my buddy JP and I just did the entire run on Daredevil that Bendis did and had so much fun.
Yeah.
And now I conned him into doing New Avengers because I'm like, I want to reread it. I've got all the singles. He's got the Omni.
Yeah.
So it's such great stuff. It's just so amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
The next question is the one that for you at least, I'm most excited about because I've been in your house and your family and your pet situation is fantastic. The whole environment that you've got there. I think I'd messaged you when we were getting on the plane flying home because I was unsure on the way out. Like, I'm bringing Charlie along. Like, is she gonna like enjoy this? How's this gonna be? She of course had an incredible time. But on the way back, I was like, so what did you think of the trip? What did you think of all the people you met? Her favorite person is your wife.
Yeah.
Charlie's like, she is in love with Sarah, like absolutely over the moon. And she said, I said, what is it about Sarah? And she said, when you talk to her, you feel like she is fully engaged and listening to you. You're the only person, right? That you feel like completely listened to. Which may have been a burn on me. I don't know, but like, but the question is really like, how is your family life? How has that changed your connection to this hobby? How are these people enriching your experience? I can't imagine a better environment for readers and fans of stories than the one you've got going there. And then of course, cool cats and chickens. And I mean, it's all happening over there at the Bryan household.
It is. It really is. Yeah. I mean, well, obviously, you know from doing this that you can't go on any creative endeavor, or, putting a bunch of content out there without having, someone who's minding the store when you're, on the mic, so
right.
So Sarah has been great about, making sure that I'm able to carve out time to do the show and to, indulge in the hobby and go to conventions and go to events and things like that. And it's not something that she's naturally a huge fan of, but she does like being along for the ride a lot, I think, is a good way to put it. Yeah. And, I think, I look at, I realize that some of the comic stories that I resonate with most are really, really family driven. And so like, my family doesn't like the same kind of things that I like to read. So like, my son Jack loves reading comics, could not care less about superheroes. Like, doesn't like, couldn't get him to sit down with, with even Ultimate Spider-Man, which is like, he would love if he would just sit down with it. It's like, no, not his thing. It's got to be his choice and he's got to decide. But he loves Raina's books, like, when you mentioned, your kids loving Raina, like that's where, the future of comics is, as far as I'm concerned. I think, us old guys, like, we're aging out of it. But the new generation coming in is like, nah, I mean, superheroes are fine for movies, I guess, but I want to read something different.
For sure.
Yeah.
Good for them.
Yeah. And I think like a book that sort of wraps it all up for me is like one of my very favorite comics of all time is Starman by James Robinson and Tony Harris originally. And for those who haven't read it, it's family is at the absolute core of this book. So there was a Golden Age DC hero, Starman, and he was a very generic hero who held a star rod that looked like a adult toy, and and it's just like very like no one like I this character was not someone who I had any interest in. And then Starman starts out with the story of his initially his elder son trying to live up to the legacy, and spoiler alert, gets shot and killed like in the first 10 pages of the story.
Oh, wow.
If that. And then the younger son sort of unwillingly gets tapped into doing this, but he's like, I'm going to do this my own way. And it's kind of a reinvention of the character from the ground up, but there's a lot of, like struggling with the weight of expectation and navigating, a relationship with a parent where there's love there, but there's a lot of complication and sort of, just it provides such a great kind of unvarnished look at what family really means. Like it's not simple. It's it's always complicated. Even if you have a great relationship with your family, like there's always going to be things that are going to, there's going to be tricky things to navigate.
Sure.
And so it's like, there's some superheroing in this, but it's incidental,
Sure.
to, what the actual thing is. And really it's just like, it's James Robinson kind of indulging in all the things he wants to write about, in the context of a superhero book that's barely a superhero book. So
that's funny because I've never read it, but it was only like 6-8 months ago. I was doing a live stream and a friend of mine was in the chat, Cliff on Comics, and he heard somebody mention Starman, and I said something along the lines of, I don't know this character, and he's like, John, you better buy this thing right now. And he dropped links. He let me know that there were two soft cover compendiums for sale. So they were on sale. I found them somewhere on sale. I bought both of them. So I've got them. I just haven't gotten around to reading them yet. So they are on my, apparently they may have moved up my list here a little bit. That was a really good synopsis.
Yeah, it's all, my very first tattoo was the Starman logo right here. So that's cool. How much I liked it. Yeah.
Wow. Great pick. What's up, Rob? Thanks for coming by, Rob. I appreciate you, my friend. Let's see. Oh yes. The next one we've kind of discussed a little bit with Bendis. The fun thing about doing this kind of thing that we've been doing is, and going to more conventions, and there's certainly some great ones in your area. Yeah. That you get to have these opportunities to interact with creators and writers and artists. And I was just curious if you had an experience with any of these people that meant something special to you, that was like, obviously that Bendis experience was pretty amazing.
Yeah. I mean, it's, we've been at the show now for about 6.5 years. And, when my buddy Rob and I started the show, we barely knew how to talk into microphones. We didn't know what we were doing. And it was, it was months and months before we even tried to have our first guest on. And when we did, we were just pulling friends of ours in. It's like, we're gonna put you on, because if this is a terrible experience, we don't feel so bad about embarrassing ourselves in front of you. But yeah, I mean, gradually we did get to to meet some folks. Portland is just filled with comics creators. It's like the comic center of the universe.
I'm learning this.
Yeah. And so, early on we had our first professional comics creator who we had on was Joe Keating, who has done a ton of stuff for Image over the years. He's editing The Future is Blank for I can't, it's Hacker spelled backwards, the name of the company. So but yeah, so I mean he was great. He's got such a great comics historian. We've had Douglas Wolk on, who wrote all of the Marvels, the book about reading every single Marvel comic. And so those guys were sort of really fundamental, and we're so grateful for having them on early. But then from there, like I was just looking down the list of like folks who we've talked to for our current season. We went on hiatus for a few months, and then we came back at the beginning of this year. But like since then we had like Mark Russell, we had Stephanie Williams and David F. Walker, Mark Evanier was on, Matt Fraction was on,
That's
Jerry
awesome.
Conway. Yeah. So
Wow.
it's, I mean, like we've had we've been very, very fortunate. And we have a guest who we've already recorded with for an episode that's coming up in a few weeks that I am so excited to talk about when I can talk about it, but we're keeping it under our hats right now. But yeah, it was a total bucket list guest.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, but one of the folks who I always wished I'd had a chance to meet and just never was able to for whatever reason is Stan Lee. I mean,
Sure.
I'm a huge Jack Kirby fan, and absolutely, and Steve Ditko, and I think they're as responsible as anyone for the Marvel universe. But I don't have a lot of patience for anyone who says that Stan didn't do anything in that equation.
Sure.
I think even if he was just, an editor and a marketer, like he still made Marvel Comics work in a way that no one else could. So
yeah, he was a face, I think, in a lot of ways for a company that I think was lacking an image. And I think, being able to be the guy who was going on David Letterman or whatever, like he was out there in a way that nobody else could be, right?
Yeah. And when Jack Kirby passed in '94, again, I never got a chance to meet Kirby either. But I was just like, I was really bummed out because from what I remember, it seemed to have come out of nowhere. It seemed like he had passed way too early. Like we should have had another 10 or 15 years with him at least. Sort of like, as I was, kind of trying to process that feeling, I was like, well, hell with it. I'm going to write Stan a letter and let him know what, how much I appreciated what he'd done. Because he, regardless of who did what exactly, like he was instrumental in a thing that has brought so much joy into my life. And, just like you should tell people that. So, I sent it off and didn't really think much of it. And then, a few weeks later, I got a package in my student mail at college. And there was it was this book here, copy of the Les Daniels, Marvel, was it 55 Fabulous Decades of the World's Greatest Comics.
Wow.
And there's a letter inside from, I assume Stan's assistant. It just said, "Dear Bryan, thanks for writing. Stan really appreciated reading your letter and asked me to send a warm Marvel thanks for your comments. It's always nice to hear from fans of Marvel. We're happy to know that we can count you as one of them." And then in the book, it says, "Hey, Bryan," and he spelled my name wrong, but I'm not mad. "Thanks for your letter. Excelsior, Stan Lee."
Wow.
So, yeah.
That is cool.
So I didn't get to meet Stan, but like, I got
but
to
you
tell
had
him,
this interaction.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's like one of those lessons, hey, if you have a chance to tell one of your heroes what they have meant to you, you should take that chance. Because you don't know when you're not going to be able to, So, and we've lost some folks just recently, like Peter David, Jim Shooter, So, yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, it feels like we're in that phase now where a lot of those heroes are of an age, right? Where that's going to be more and more likely. The George Perez's of the world, those kinds of people. I'm so grateful that I've been able to meet some of them. To your point earlier, like Marv Wolfman's been somebody that goes to, like, kind of like Frank Miller, comes to my LCS all the time. And he'll be in there. He'll sign all the New Teen Titans trades and everything that's in the shop and just put it back on the shelf. And my LCS won't upcharge them. They'll just be sitting there. If you're lucky enough to pull one down, you might get
amazing.
a signed book that you didn't know was signed by Marv. But I never got to meet Perez or Stan or Jack. And I haven't even met Claremont actually, because the cons he tends to go to for his preference are mostly East Coast,
Oh, okay.
Northeast Coast. So when I've gone to San Diego, he's never been there.
Mm.
When I went to
Yeah.
Baltimore the one year he didn't go, I went. So so even a creator that I adore like Claremont is never seems to be at the conventions that I'm going to. So
Yeah.
wow,
Yeah.
that's but it's also impressive how quickly he responded.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it
The
was a
fact it
pretty,
wasn't like 6 months later or something.
yeah. Yeah. 100%. And, and it's such, for that reason, like it's such a big deal when we do manage to get, because right now we're up to, in our chronology on Marvel by the Month, we're up to like the end of 1976.
Okay.
And
Oh, so you're
it
about to get
is,
into the Miss Marvel era. We're about to get Carol Danvers Miss Marvel, right? Isn't that January, Miss Marvel 1?
yeah, and it was we go by the date that it hit the newsstand, so I think we
Okay.
cover that in our October 76.
Okay,
And that's
because the cover date, yeah, sure.
exactly, and that's the episode that we got the guest that I'm very excited about. So
Nice.
yeah, but it is a little, it's a little sad when we're looking for folks to talk about, these comics with, and we've only managed to talk to three professionals who are still alive who worked on comics in this era. We talked to Steve Englehart a couple
Sure.
times. We
Sure.
talked to Jerry Conway a couple times, and then we talked to Howard Chaykin once, and that was an experience.
I've helped guide an interview with him once before, and he's a roller coaster.
He is, my God. I went in prepared, and I don't like, but I also didn't know what to prepare for, and it turns out like he's just there to have fun and kind of give you a hard time if you're not 100% on your game. And he got the chance to do both. So
Oh, that's fantastic. I love
yeah,
it.
yeah.
What's up, Donnie? He jumped in the chat. I'm sorry I missed you, my friend.
Mhm.
He says, agree with the comment on Stan's output in the industry, however, his habit of disregarding artists. Yeah, obviously that was a tricky element of
Yeah,
his
100%.
experience, because obviously he's gonna, as the face, as the person out in the public, he's gonna outshine just by that status. He's gonna
Yeah,
outshine a lot of people.
yeah. There's a great book. I think it's published by Tomorrows. It's called Stuff Said, STUF said. And it is basically like an oral history of everything that Stan and Jack said in public interviews and public statements about their partnership, from the earliest days. And so it's the closest we're going to get to like a primary source for,
Sure.
now that both men have passed.
Yeah.
And by the end, they were definitely not on the same page about who was doing what. But one of the things that's really interesting is you realize that over the course of their lives, they were using the same words to mean two different things. And I don't think there was necessarily bad intent there all the time. But when Kirby talks about writing a comic, he's talking writing Marvel comics. He's talking about breaking down the plot. Like he'd start from the springboard that Stan would give him, the sentence or two, and then he'd break down the plot. He'd write notes in the margins about what was going on, so Stan knew how to dialogue it. And that, to Kirby, he's like, I wrote that book.
Right.
And Stan, from his perspective, will say, well, I'm the person I came up with the original idea, maybe sometimes. And I put all the words in everyone's mouth.
Right.
And I gave them their character. And I wrote that book. I literally wrote the words, on the page that were lettered onto the balloons. So they're both right, but they're both wrong too.
Yeah. It's trying to argue if it's the cheese or the bread that makes you a grilled cheese sandwich.
Right. Exactly. It's like, it's a sandwich.
You're not going to have it independently, one or the other, right? Either it's just bread or it's just cheese. And until you put them together and cook it, you don't have anything.
Yeah.
I'm mentioning Howard Chaykin, American flag. There you go.
Yep.
The next question is a fun one, I think, because it's nice to know, outside of just this milieu or this world of comics, if there's things that you collect or things that bring you joy or that you enjoy doing, hobbies and such that are outside of this. I know you and I geeked a little bit about Star Trek when I was out there. Is there stuff beyond comics that are you would consider hobbies or collections for you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a collector. You might be able to tell. But yeah, I mean, I never ever lost my love for toys. You know, I loved them as a kid, and as they got better and better as an adult, I'm like, I think they're, you know, I don't know. We have our the downstairs of our house is sort of like the rec room area, and it's just like it's filled with a bunch of toys. It's filled with a bunch of Transformers. It's filled with a bunch of Lego and things like that. And it's like, you know, some of it like is there because I like having that stuff around and I like playing with it, but it's mostly there because I want Jack to be surrounded by this stuff too. You know, it's like I think, you know, it's a cool opportunity to do for your kid. Like it's like just kind of turn them loose, or when they're over with their friends, it's like, you know, have at it, you know. And I don't know, I feel like, you know, with screens sort of taking over everyone's lives, like there's not really an opportunity for a lot of like physical interaction and play. And so anytime I can keep him off an iPad and you know, and have him build a Lego set, I feel like that's a win. But to keep it, you know, more comic centered, you know, I also collect a lot of the Marvel Legends action figures.
Oh yeah,
I've always loved action figures. I would always, you know, anytime I go into a department store, I will go down the toy aisle and just see like, hey, what's out these days? And I think the since we're living in an era where, you know, the nerds won, like the thing, the characters that they will make action, like there's no character they won't make an action figure out of anymore.
right.
And so there's so many, you know, characters who like, for whatever reason, I might be one of the only people who actually cares about this character. But there's an action figure of him. And
I love
you know,
it.
because of the circumstances of when I started reading comics, like this character was really important to me, or a character I remember, like, you know, like this is my Captain Marvel, you know, right there, Monica Rambeau.
100%.
Yeah. You know, I started reading Avengers during the Roger Stern run, and he was just pushing her like to the moon. You know, so she was, you know, one of my favorites. We got Quasar, Mark Gruenwald, cool. You know, character. Yeah. And again, you know, it's like what kid in America is asking for a Quasar figure? It's none of them. It's dudes in our 40s and 50s that are asking for this. And then to the point where like even Razorback, there's a deep cut. This is like the only thing I know about this character is he showed up in some She-Hulk comics that I read in the 80s, and I loved him as a character. And it's just like a great, absurd Marvel character design. So,
right.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So, you know, it's like how weird and wonderful to just, you know, be in an era where it's like, yeah, you like literally there's no character too obscure for us to make. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I went into my shop. Those are great. And they had Binary. They had Carol Danvers Binary action. I was like, they made a Binary action figure? And I couldn't find it. I turned around to see if I could spot it. But they, you know, yeah. And then those Marvel Legends ones are really high quality. They're really good. I recently got a Sue Storm one and a Luke Cage one. And really cool. Like the old Luke Cage with the deep V and the big metal band. And
I mean, and I think we can thank Todd McFarlane for all this, honestly. Like when he pivoted from, or not pivoted, but he expanded into toy production, you know, in the 90s, like he set a standard for quality that no American toy manufacturer had ever come anywhere close to. And he really forced everyone to step up their game in a really, really dramatic way. So, yeah.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
Some Binary love. There you go. Well, that's how I first found her, Donnie. I didn't know about Ms. Marvel because the Captain Marvel I grew up with was Monica Rambeau. And
Right.
I was reading X-Men, and that's where I saw Carol show up, and Carol was binary. That was who she was. So it took me a
Yep.
while to connect the dots and make like, oh wait, she's Captain Marvel and Ms. Marvel, and put all
Yeah.
that together.
And it's so cool. Like Claremont is really, he kept that character alive for a long
Really
time
did.
because Jerry Conway was the writer. Conway and Buscema, John Buscema, created the character of Ms. Marvel, the Carol Danvers Ms. Marvel.
Yeah, the first issues of that
Yeah,
run.
just like the
Yeah.
first 2 issues, maybe
Because
3,
I
and
just read
then
that omnibus. I bought it
yeah,
a year ago because I had finished collecting all the single issues,
hmm
and then I bought the omnibus to read it, and I was surprised that Claremont hadn't done the whole thing. So yeah,
yeah,
Conway at the beginning, yeah,
yep. And then Claremont takes it over, and then the series gets canceled because the sales weren't great. The whole era of that era of Marvel Comics, it was the industry looked like it was about to implode at any moment. And but then he would bring her back in X-Men. It's like, yeah, it's like, okay, so now she's binary, now she's gonna be Warbird, now she's gonna be and we'll figure now Rogue's gonna absorb her personality, and all
right.
this stuff, like um and kind of kept her going long enough as a character so that it's like, okay, well, there's enough history to this character now that maybe we can do more interesting stuff down the road. And other creators really kind of took that ball and ran with it. And then Kelly Sue DeConnick saying, it's like, well, we don't have a Captain Marvel right now, seems like we should, because that's the name of the
Right.
company.
Yeah, exactly, right? Flagship
Yeah.
character.
Yeah.
And then now you can't imagine it without Carol somewhere in some
Yeah.
form, right? I feel like she's a staple of the Marvel universe at this point. And yeah,
Yeah,
to your point,
100%.
I think it's all due to Claremont like not letting that ember burn out in any way.
Yeah. I mean, that's such a huge aspect of Marvel Comics too, is like never throw anything away, like that's something we've seen on the show over and over and over. When the
Right.
Hulk first shows up, he gets 6 issues and they're canceled, and they're like trying to figure out how the Hulk works for 6 issues, and like, this doesn't work. So they cancel the series, but then they keep him showing up as a supporting character, and then eventually they bring him back, and there's still like, it takes them forever to figure out how the Hulk's going to work. And then finally they get to, it's like, oh, when he's angry, he turns into the Hulk. Like, and that's it,
Right.
Yeah. And then, eventually down the road, Peter David gets his hands on the character, and it's a good thing that they kept it going because he did
Right.
the definitive Hulk run. Yeah.
I think it's the same with a lot of those runs. Yeah, to your point. Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
That was great, by the way. I love. I've only dabbled in action figures, and I don't keep them in the boxes. I'm not a box person. But the more I see, the more I'm like, wow. If I really go down this well, I'm going to spend a lot more money than I'm comfortable spending.
Yeah, it's you have to be very, very careful.
100%.
Yeah.
The next question I didn't get the chance to ask last time. It has to do with charity, and I think it's very telling of people and households when you understand where they put that money and that time, what efforts they put in. I had a student in my class whose parents, they were only able to have one child. They struggled hard to have one child, and then what they would do is, so they had a very small family, and every Thanksgiving they would go and they would drive down to the local army base and invite any soldiers that needed somewhere to go for Thanksgiving to come to their house. And they would always pick up 5 or 6 guys who were, they're like 19, 20. These are young kids that are stuck at a base far from home. They can't be with their families. And somebody offers to give them a full Thanksgiving. And it was so like the charity that they were doing was impacting these gentlemen and ladies in such a unique way. But like it's telling of the kinds of people that we are, the things that we interact with. And I was just curious if there's organizations or groups or things that you've connected with and things in your collection that remind you of just the capacity of humanity in some ways.
Yeah. Well, I mean, anyone who pays any attention to comics history knows that over the years, there's a lot of heartbreak in there. There's a lot of folks being screwed over. They lose the rights to characters they created. I mean, the infamous Siegel Schuster selling Superman for $130, and Joe Shuster going blind in an apartment in the 1970s when the Superman movie is coming out, and Neil Adams shaming DC Comics into paying him and Siegel a stipend or a pension for, and things have gotten a little better since then, but there's still, I mean, there's still creators who, they fall in hard times. They have to launch a GoFundMe, it's like, and I think it's terrific that the community steps up, to help them in those, but it's awful that we need to even, be doing that. And so, one of the charities that I've been a huge proponent of, and I'll shout it to the rafters whenever I have the opportunity, is the Hero Initiative, which is, for those who are not aware, it is an organization where it's a nonprofit that has a board made up of mostly comics professionals, and they solicit donations, and then they, when they get requests, when they hear about a creator who has fallen ill or is living in poverty or is in danger of becoming homeless, they will figure out ways to get them some money to pay their rent, to help them with medical bills, things like that. So the comic that I associate with that is when George Perez was dying of cancer. Marvel and DC, somehow got on the same page for 10 minutes, and they put JLA Avengers back into print as a special hero initiative. It was an incentive. So basically any of the profits that this made went straight to the Hero Initiative, and George got to hold the book before he passed, so he knew this was all happening, and he was he donated a lot of time and money to the Hero Initiative over his life, and so I think that brought him a lot of peace. That's
awesome.
And so when when they were doing all that, there was a comic shop in Portland, which sadly has closed since, called the Comics Cave. And the proprietor, Doug, we reached out and said, hey, if you're going to get one of these in, we'd love to be able to, to buy it and then, give it away to one of our patrons. And, our plan was basically we would then take all of our Patreon money for that month and donate it to the Hero Initiative.
That's cool.
And he hooked us up. And then a friend of mine who has done work for the Hero Initiative over the years and has been, pretty involved with them. After we had made that decision and had sent that book out, this friend of mine reached out and he's like, I managed to get my hands on this and I already have the hardcover. Do you want it? So it's like the karma came back. It's like I got the book and then I didn't have to give the book away.
That's crazy.
But it's a nice, tangible reminder that, there are people out there who are looking out for these creators. I wish the companies were a little more proactive about it sometimes, right. But at least the people who have been personally touched and affected by their work generally do a really good job of standing up for them. So
yeah, it's a great organization, and I will say I have connected with their company several times now. Mm-hmm. Certainly at cons, you folks might see creators like Marv Wolfman is another example where he's not accepting money for his signatures. He has a little jar for the Hero Initiative, and he'll say just put some money in that jar. And I know Mike Zeck, I've seen him do the same kind of thing. So you'll see some of the elder statesmen creators representing the Hero Initiative. And then I know during COVID, I was connected to a group called the Comic Corps, and they, with conventions not happening, a lot of these creators were even in harder times and needed to figure, this was how they made money. They weren't creating comics anymore. They were going to cons for their living. And so we started doing online comic conventions and things like that. And it was all done through the Hero Initiative, and all the money went to the Hero Initiative. And
cool.
And there were even like you could bid on offline like interview, StreamYard kind of interviews. And so like I remember managing one for, I think I did one for Zdarsky did one that was
Cool.
great. He donated his time, and 6-7 people donated money, and then they got on a screen like this, and I was able to kind of moderate, and they could ask personal questions, and he would make jokes, and he was hilarious. And Joelle Jones did one, and I moderated that, and she was giving out a piece of artwork to every single person who paid, and all the money went to the Hero Initiative. So I think it's amazing how many, to your point, creators are actively aware of the Hero Initiative and the great work they're doing for. Because I mean, look, if you're making your living with your hands, that's something that's going to fade at some point. That's something that's going to be hard to do as you're older, and to make sure that those people are able to live with dignity to the end of their lives as long as they can.
Absolutely.
That's important.
And I think especially for artists, I don't think folks realize like drawing is a physically demanding process. Like you have to sit at a board, and it's a lot of wrist and elbow, like a lot of strain, which sounds like, first world problem. It's like, no, it is seriously like, you're locked in one position. It's a sedentary, very lonely job.
Right.
And, you're doing all this, and like, if you start developing like a repetitive stress injury, or if you start losing your eyesight, like, we're middle-aged guys, can't go anywhere without my glasses,
or arthritis, or
exactly. Yeah. So it is like, it's not exactly like on the level of being a professional athlete, where it's like, unless you're a freak of nature, your career's done by 40, but it's close,
right. It's gross of a motor skill versus fine motor skill. I don't know that there's I don't know that it's fair to judge one versus the other. They're just different, and they both deteriorate naturally. And being able to care for those talents is hugely important. So great pick. So last question. I like to kind of discuss, I think sometimes we focus and certainly in American culture and social media culture, we focus on the end result. Like, oh, look, they got this award, or they won this, whatever. But like, I like the journey, the challenge, the hard work that goes into something. And I like to sort of know a little bit if there's any achievements that you went through in your life, or things that you struggled or that you look back on and are able to be proud of the journey that you went through.
I took this one in a slightly different direction.
I love
it. So we talked a little bit about our friend Jennifer, who passed away last December after a year and a half battle with cancer. My family was lucky to be in a position where we were able to really help with her care, and really take her to appointments and things like that, and help her navigate some red tape and all that. And just doing, some of the day-to-day stuff that you just have to do with someone who's got a serious illness. But also, on the more fun side of it, sort of approached it as like, this is our little Make-A-Wish project. And so, we like Jennifer and I went to a ton of shows together. We would, go to movies and concerts, and just spent an awful lot of time, like packed as much as we could into, a very, very short period of time. And, she was always very effusive about talking about how appreciative she was. She was a very, very grateful person. And when she was a person who did not like things being done with her. She was fiercely independent. But if you were a person who she let do things for her, she let you know, and she was really, really grateful about it. And when we came to the end, and we had to have the conversation about like, well, what do you want us to do with your things. One of the first things she said was, well, I want you to have this. It's the only slabbed comic I have. And again, I do not collect for value, but it's the first appearance of Swamp Thing.
Such a great book
with Louise Simonson as
it
the cover
is,
model.
yeah.
Yep. But yeah, House of Secrets 92. And you know, I love Swamp Thing. That's not why this is meaningful to me. You know, it'll never come out of the slab and it'll never leave my possession. But it just, you know, it's sort of a tangible reminder that, you know, I got to do this amazing thing for this amazing person. Yeah, it's just, I think in the end, the only thing that matters is what we're able to do for other people. And I think that, you know, that means, you know, the people who we are close to, you know, our closest friendships and our family, you know, the people who make and do the things that we love. You know, so I think if there's one through line throughout, you know, what comics has taught me and what I try to put back into it, it is just like, hey, you know, make sure the people who do the things you love know that you love those things. Make sure the people who are in your community who you love, make sure they know that you love them, you know, and show it, make a habit of showing it. It is such a, even in hard times, like knowing that you're doing that makes you feel a little less helpless. It's good for the soul. So, yeah, I think, you know, I think there, like in any fandom, you know, there are some real jerks out there. And there are petty people and there are bullies and there are, you know, folks who were, you know, just real pain in the ass to be around. But there's also, there's folks who take the right lessons, you know, like superheroes by definition are social justice warriors. You know, like they are warriors in, you know, in pursuit of social justice. And, you know, I think whenever you have the chance to do that, that's where I think this stuff, you know, ultimately, like I said, it's the only thing that matters in the end. And it's the one thing that you do have control over, you know, even if current events have you feeling like you're not in control of anything. This will really, you know, it'll do your heart some good. So
sure. And what a great reminder of that. I think that book definitely meant a ton to Jen, and I think you meant a ton to Jen. And to your point, again, I think that experience you had, both for you and Jen, but also I think for Jack and for Sarah, I think your whole family had this empowering kind of connective experience that I mentioned at the beginning of the show. I was very grateful knowing that there were community members like you there supporting and being around her, that when we couldn't reach across the country and put an arm around her, that there were people that like you who were doing that on not only just for us, but on the daily, you know, in so many ways. And then going to heavy metal concerts and, you know, all of that stuff. I think when I would message with her and she would consistently be like, oh, I just got back from this screening or this concert. And, you know, it was wonderful to see her out in the world and doing things. You know, so I thank you for that.
It was absolutely my honor and pleasure. Like you know, I'm so happy. It's so sad to have lost her, but so happy that we're able to, you know, we couldn't do anything about the quantity of life, but we hopefully improve the quality of life. So
great way to say it. Absolutely. Bryan, thank you so much for taking the time to chat this morning. This was exactly what I wanted to get from this series of conversations with the community, is that sense of community, that sense of connectivity, and your journey was fascinating and fun, and I appreciate you taking the time to share it with us.
Well, thank you so much, John. I really appreciate being brought in for this. I appreciate the invite, and it's always great to chat with you. Like, we should definitely find more excuses to do this.
Absolutely, you can count on it.
All right.
Everybody, be prepared for. I'm off next Saturday, but the one after that, I think I got Lady Fantastic coming in here, so I'll have Caroline in here next time around. I appreciate all of you hanging out with me and with Bryan. The links are down below. If you're looking for Marvel by the Month, the podcast, it's all down there. There's even a link tree, so if you want to get any of that information, you can get it there. And I will catch you guys all again later.